So then, just to start, I think it's good to understand a little bit about the landscape in Latin America. So do you have a few numbers about about Mexico, how the fintech sector is progressing there? We know that there are lots of talks on regulation, the open banking regulation. So I would like to know from you a little bit of how is it going? Also in the instant payment side with Cortes. So give us a wrap up of what's going on in Mexico right now.
Lots of questions there. Maybe just to start, for people that are not from Latin America that want to know more about the sector, there's around 3,000 fintechs in Latin America. This is a sector that has grown over 340% since 2017. And about Mexico, well, I mean, same as Brazil, it's been one of the sectors that has received the most funding from startups. And additionally, it has been growing immensely the past few years. Of course, there's a lot of challenges, which is what makes it fun to be a fintech in Latin America, starting with regulation. You mentioned open banking, which I know that Mexico was one of the first countries that actually started to talk about open banking. But a few years later, it's still something that we're hoping it will become reality at some point. But right now, it's still far from true. I know that in Brazil, this is something that has gone up more rapidly. I don't know if you have anything to say about the open banking space in Brazil.
Definitely. We're already seeing the impacts of it. So the implementation is not trivial. What Brazil did based it a lot on the UK experience. I think the hardest part is trying to get everyone involved. So we have like a big banks along with fintechs and everyone to find a common ground. It got to be mandatory. So I had lots of conversations in the region, especially from Brazil. I had these conversations in Colombia as well. And the main problem is they said, okay, what do you think was the main factor, Bruno? What do you think was the main factor of success for Brazil? Is the fact that it's mandatory. And the Colombians, some few people from the regulators, they said, oh, so yeah, we really need to consider that into advancing this scope of open finance. And now Brazil, it's growing. We still have we had some issues in terms of data quality, things like that, but it's continuously being monitored. It's the implementation phase, like 4 phases since 2020, but now we are advancing. But besides that, we also have the instant payment side, which the combination between the two things, the PIX, which is our instant payments infrastructure, along with open finance, can deliver like many new experiences in the market. But you also had in Mexico Cortes and other experience. But we've been talking in the speakers lounge. You said you're not very optimistic, but I want to understand your views on that. Why you think like both open banking and also the conversations on instant payments is a little bit trickier in Mexico?
I mean, I think something that works really well in Mexico at this point is SPAY. SPAY, all the instant transfers are done immediately, no problem. But there's been some implementations, as you mentioned, like Cortes by the government, which haven't been implemented correctly by the institutions and also by the end users. So we haven't seen something like PIX come up into our market. I understand that PIX has 72% penetration on the Brazilian population, something like that.
Yeah,
so we haven't seen that on our side in Mexico. Hopefully soon we'll see. And I think one of the factors that has made it hard for this to be implemented has been that it's not mandatory. So I think a lot of the challenges we see is that if something becomes mandatory, people start adapting to it. If not, banks, especially traditional banks, will keep going the way they've been doing for the past decade or so.
Yeah, it demands a lot of regulatory effort for things to proceed in this sense. We're seeing that in the US. I think there are lots of conversations around here at the event about open banking, how's it progressing, it's coming, regulation is start to happen here on that, but it's a jointly effort. So we need an ecosystem for that to work, and that's another tricky part of that, to try to conciliate all those aspects.